When it becomes a habit to think about a particular person, the process is rarely as romantic as we imagine. It's psychological conditioning. The first stage of this phenomenon is what we call the psychological loop of attachment. It's when your mind begins to replay the image, the voice, and the presence of that person over and over again. What starts as a moment of curiosity turns into a cycle of repetitive thought. The brain begins to associate that person with feelings of excitement, comfort, or even relief, and this association strengthens through every interaction or memory related to them. In psychology, this is linked to how our reward system functions. Each time you think about that person and feel a pleasant emotion, your brain releases a small dose of dopamine, the same chemical that reinforces habits like scrolling social media or eating your favorite food. This dopamine hit makes your mind crave more, leading you to think about them again, hoping for that same emotional reward. Over time, your brain learns that focusing on this person brings emotional stimulation, and without realizing it, your thoughts start looping automatically. You're not consciously deciding to think about them anymore, it becomes an internal reflex. For women, this attachment loop can be particularly intense because emotional processing regions in the female brain are generally more active and connected to memory centers. This means emotions and memories blend easily, turning experiences into emotional triggers. A single message, a memory of laughter, or even a scent associated with that person can reopen the entire mental file of attachment. This cycle can feel powerful because it's not only emotional but biological. When you think about someone repeatedly, your brain wires together neurons that activate simultaneously, a process known as Hebbian learning. Neurons that fire together, wire together. So, the more you think about them, the stronger that connection becomes. Eventually, you build a mental habit loop where your thoughts return to them even when you're busy or trying to focus elsewhere. It's not that you're weak or obsessed, your brain has simply practiced thinking of that person so often that it has become second nature. However, this attachment loop can create confusion. You might start believing that constant thoughts mean deeper love or destiny, but from a psychological standpoint, it's a learned emotional habit. Your mind has been conditioned to find pleasure in that person's memory, just as we find comfort in a familiar song or scent. And habits, even emotional ones, don't always reflect truth, they reflect repetition. The challenge is that the more the loop continues, the more it reinforces itself. When the person doesn't respond or moves away, your brain interprets that absence as pain. It's not only the person you miss, but the chemical balance and emotional rhythm you built around them. Breaking this loop requires understanding how it began. Every thought, every small pleasure linked to their memory is a mental reward. When those rewards are consistent, your subconscious starts seeking them automatically. You may catch yourself checking your phone, waiting for their message, or replaying conversations in your head, not because you consciously choose to, but because your brain is seeking that dopamine fix. In emotional psychology, this pattern mirrors the same mechanism found in behavioral addictions: repetition, reward, and craving. It's also worth noting that this psychological loop doesn't depend on mutual connection. Even if the relationship wasn't deep or ended long ago, your mind can still maintain the loop because of the emotional charge that was once attached. That's why some people struggle to move on. Their thoughts are chemically tied to the person, not emotionally chosen in the present. Recognizing this helps remove self-blame. You're not overreacting, your brain is following a pattern it learned over time. Emotional investment and memory imprinting are at the heart of why thinking about someone becomes such a powerful and often uncontrollable experience. Each time you think about a person, talk to them, or even replay a memory involving them, your brain records that emotional moment and stores it in your subconscious. It's not just the event that gets stored, it's the emotion attached to it. That's why certain people linger in our minds longer than others. It's not because of how much time we spent with them, but how deeply they made us feel. The brain prioritizes emotional memories over neutral ones, which is why even the smallest moments, like a text at midnight, a shared laugh, or a deep look, can become mental anchors. These anchors tie that person to a strong emotional experience, creating a sense of emotional familiarity that your brain keeps revisiting. This emotional imprinting works like a recording system that never truly stops. When you recall someone who affected you emotionally, your brain doesn't just remember them, it reactivates the same feelings that were present during the experience. That's why thinking about them can still make your heart race or your chest tighten, even if they're no longer in your life. The emotion is not a memory of the past, it's a relived experience in the present moment. This process explains why moving on from someone can be so hard. You're not only fighting your thoughts, you're re-experiencing the emotional chemistry that person triggered inside you. Psychologically, emotional investment happens when your brain associates that person with comfort, excitement, or belonging. Each small act of attention, checking their social media, waiting for a reply, or replaying old conversations, feeds that emotional database. It's similar to watering a plant, the more you feed those emotions, the stronger the roots grow. Over time, your mind begins to identify this person as part of your emotional structure. That's why their absence feels like a missing piece of yourself. The truth is, your emotional system has built a pattern that includes them as part of your daily mental rhythm. This imprinting also affects perception. When you emotionally invest in someone, your brain tends to highlight their good traits and minimize their flaws. This is called selective emotional memory. You subconsciously filter information to protect your emotional narrative. Even if the person hurt you or distanced themselves, your mind clings to the moments that felt good because those are what fed your emotional reward system. This selective recall is what makes detachment confusing. You remember the warmth but forget the wounds. In reality, your brain is protecting the emotional bond it has already built, because breaking it would create psychological discomfort. Another layer of emotional imprinting lies in how your brain connects sensory details to memories. The human mind doesn't store emotions in isolation, it links them to sensory experiences like scent, music, tone, or visual images. That's why hearing a song or visiting a certain place can suddenly make you think of that person. These sensory triggers reopen emotional files you didn't consciously choose to revisit. It's not that you want to think about them, it's that your brain has programmed that association too deeply to differentiate between the past and present moment. As time passes, emotional investment can turn into mental habit. You may start imagining scenarios with that person, idealizing them, or even rewriting memories to make them fit what you wish had happened. This mental replaying is your mind's attempt to keep the emotional imprint alive. When we invest emotionally, our brains crave completion. If the connection ended abruptly or never fulfilled your expectations, your subconscious tries to resolve it by reliving it, hoping to find closure within imagination. But this only strengthens the neural pathways that keep you thinking about them. Breaking free from emotional imprinting isn't about forcing yourself to forget. It's about detaching the emotion from the memory. The person may stay in your story, but their emotional charge doesn't have to control your present. This begins with awareness, realizing that what you feel now is not a reflection of current reality but of stored emotional energy. When you stop feeding the memory with emotional attention, the brain gradually rewires. The feelings lose their intensity, and the thought loses its grip. Ultimately, emotional investment and memory imprinting show how powerful the human mind is at bonding and remembering. We are wired to connect deeply, but also capable of healing deeply. The same brain that created those emotional imprints can unlearn them through time, reflection, and conscious self-care. By understanding that your emotional attachment is a result of how your brain stores and recalls feelings, you take the first step toward emotional independence. You learn that you are not bound by the memories of a person, you are only bound by the meaning you continue to give them.